Hi everyone, welcome to the Global Music Teachers podcast and vlog, where we connect you with some of our amazing music teachers from around our network. Today I'm joined by Dan Robertson. Hey Dan.
G'day Mike.
Dan's an amazing piano teacher and educator who's recently back in New Zealand, but actually started an amazing academy in Melbourne called the Richmond Music Academy. And today I wanted to talk with Dan about that process where he started an academy, because there's quite a few teachers across the network who are in a place where they've grown their business to a point where they'd like to start thinking about expanding, whether it's starting an academy or hiring another teacher. So yeah, it's great to have an experienced business operator and music educator who can kind of share his experience going through that exact journey. So Dan.
G'day.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I think the biggest thing for most people is deciding what that pivotal moment is, where you move from teaching one-on-one piano lessons, for example, and then moving into starting a bigger business. So can you share with us, I guess, that process for you?
Yeah. So when I was in Melbourne, I started, like most people, teaching from my room, from your bedroom, which always feels a bit weird, you know. And you got to keep everything. You know, you got your bed right there. And I remember one of my students came. There's this little dude with his mum, and he turns and I tried to just ignore it, you know, just don't talk about it. He turns and he's like, "Is that your bed?" And I was like, "Oh man." So anyway, after I had about 12 students, one of my flatmates started getting a bit upset. Well, I didn't actually realise, but she was quietly brewing, and also brewing. I'd been doing a lot of piano practice, and she was getting upset about that. And one night she came at me and let it all out. You know, you got strangers coming in here, and she just really went at me. Which, you know, in hindsight, I'm grateful for, because then I got to do a new thing. At the time, it felt pretty horrible, and also I didn't know why it was happening. Like, I was like, I didn't even expect this, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought I had to try. Move to that next level, which is to get a music academy. The reason I did, I had a mentor over there, Cam, who is in music advertising, and he said to me, "Look, get a shop and dwelling, you can live upstairs and teach downstairs." So that was the dream. And plus I just read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. Have you ever read that?
Yeah.
And I was like, "Whoa, start my business." And so little did I know that it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah. So to give it context, how many students were there at this kind of leaving the flat?
So I just had 12.
Yep.
And so then it's about finding a building. And so I don't know, at this point maybe we'll segue into other options, or should I go straight to the finding the building?
Yeah. So what was it like? So you said that your friend said the shop with the dwelling above.
Yeah.
Like,
All right. So firstly, what I wanted was something for about $40,000 a year. I could live upstairs and have another friend, you know, 2 bedrooms upstairs, so I could sublet it.
Yep.
And then downstairs I could have maybe 3 studios. That was the idea. So I started ringing up real estate agents, and one guy, I think pretty quickly, he's like, "Oh, you want that?" He's like, "The areas you want, because you want it in a city, so it's all happening," or at least I did. He's like, "You're dreaming, really." And I was like, "We'll see about that." And then like half an hour later, I had the place. Like, I found the place. I hadn't gone and checked it out yet.
Yeah.
That place that I found was $40,000 a year. But then you get into the other costs. And I have a feeling that everybody who starts like a business or undertaking like this suffers from what I suffer from, which is over-optimism. And so I was like, yeah, this will be fine. I'll just, start out, and I'll have students straight away. Like, I'll have like 100 students straight away, and teachers working for me. And I had no idea what things would cost.
Yeah.
And I kind of read the lease. You know, a lease is a big thing. So you get a lease. It can be either like, they talk about 2 + 2, 3 + 3, or 5 + 5, or any variance there. But that's pretty standard, at least in Melbourne. So you have 2 years. 2 + 2 means 2 years plus the option of another 2 at the end of that. which you'd want if you're starting a business as an absolute minimum. And then you also have to pay several months bond in advance, and the lease is expensive. So what I didn't realise was that the bond was there as well, and I didn't realise that the outgoings. So you have maybe this one was 40,000 a year plus outgoings, and I was like, outgoings, yep, just sounds like a word that I don't know. I don't need to look into that. But actually, you do need to look into that because, and that is things like council rates, building rates. You pay for the fire person to come around. So all of these other things, and then these bills start coming real quick when you start up, and you've got no students, initially.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a shock. But then you've got to do, like, for me, I had to build the studios, and I had to soundproof the studios to some extent. Then I had to do advertising, which you know about, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in advertising. I had to get design, so you need a graphic artist, and in that case, I was making changes to the existing plans, so I had to get a toilet that was wheelchair accessible.
Yeah.
And so wheelchair accessible meant that I had to have the whole thing wheelchair accessible, which was a recent thing in Melbourne. I know what it was like in Christchurch, but that meant on top of my bills, I had a whole other bunch of bills.
Yeah.
And one of them was for the door that I didn't realise. I thought I'd paid it, but I paid another bill. And just when I'd run out of money, I had maybe my life savings had dwindled down to a measly like 18,000. I got that bill, and it was 20 grand. And I actually, at that point, I'd realised I hadn't found any students, and I maybe had made a bad decision, and I didn't even like doing music academy. And so when I got that bill for 20,000, I looked at it, and I went to the toilet and dry reached for a while. Like, seriously, I was like, oh, I'm going to vomit. And then I came back and lay on my bed. I was like, I cannot pay this, right? And luckily the bank steps up and is like, oh, we noticed that you're, losing money. Maybe you'd like an overdraft. And so they got a $5,000 overdraft next to my account. So the other thing that happens is I remember waking up one morning going, I've got all these rooms, I've got this big academy, but nobody knows I'm here. And nobody cares. I mean, people care, but they've got their own lives happening, right? Yeah. So at that point, there's only me that has to do something. So I've got to go and, all right, let's go and try and find some advertising. Let's look at Google AdWords. Let's look at all this stuff and try and get something cooking. So slowly, you started to crawl my way back. So then the other thing is managing people.
Yeah. We should talk about the before, when you said to me before we did this started the video, you mentioned like alternatives to your plan, which was like go from teaching in your room to finding a space that you can live and teach below. And you mentioned like maybe starting to hunt around for a teaching space.
Oh, absolutely.
Prior to like basically a room that's the size of your bedroom but doesn't have a bed in it.
Yeah.
So you can say this is the office space or professional teaching space, and then my living is in another house.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I got this from one of my students who's a business marketer.
Yeah.
Later, like after I'd been through my journey of chaos.
Yeah.
But one of the things he said was, everybody's got that idea. You go from teaching out of your bedroom. Step 2, leasing a building. But that's hugely, it's massive, and there's got to be an interim step, or some interim steps on the way.
Yeah.
So one thing that he said is that wherever you live, there'll always be a room somewhere available. So that could be like the back of the hairdressers or upstairs of the hairdressers, and I've just got a room they're not using. I've dumped a whole bunch of stuff in, or at a factory, or maybe one of my friends said a factory was fine, but somewhere like that, above something, or a room out the back of something that you can, and you just go to those people and you're making $0 off it at the moment. I can give you $50 a week, or I can give you $100 a week. So this is a much better way to do it. And this is what, if you go and see a good business marketer, he should tell you to do. So you're not going straight from zero to spending 50k a year plus. You go, all right, the minimal costs while I build up my practice.
Yeah.
So in that case, you've got a room. Say I've got 12 students, I've been teaching from home, it's been a bit less than professional. Now you can put a piano in your room, you make it a bit nice, and this is just only music happens here.
Yeah.
And people know they're going to a place which is separate to a house.
Yeah.
You could even charge slightly more and that kind of thing. You're still only paying, I say $50 a week is probably the dream, but you could probably get it for that if someone's getting nothing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or you can go $100 a week. The other good thing about that is it's not a lease. You just found someone who's got a space they're not using. So as soon as you get, he might say, give me 2 weeks notice. But 2 weeks, $200.
Yeah.
Compared to a lease where you'll have to give quite a bit of notice and you've got your bond that they might take.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's no risk. That's what you want, is minimal risk, and then to really grow like that. So then you start getting, maybe several others, maybe you get up to like 20 students, and you think, well, I'm running out of time. Maybe I could get another teacher to work for me, and then you find another room, either in that same building or somewhere else. That would be the ideal way to go. And as you go, and I think I mentioned this before, there's a good video on the BBC website talking about the risks of following your dreams, and it's on the BBC Reel, and how if you've got like your dream that you had when you're 13, which is to become a bar owner, is the example they give, and then you're like, I'm only going to do that. Well, then it's too rigid, and so you don't like, if you on the way you might find something you're better at. I'll give you the example from my case. So I started managing other teachers, and I realized that I hate managing other teachers. Like it just sucks for me. And even you've got to organize concerts when you've got an academy, all that kind of thing. And so then I realized I actually really like just teaching. So in doing this way that I mentioned, where you just book a room, just get a room, and you start off slowly growing. Well, then once you get to capacity, you might get another room and get another teacher. And then you're starting to manage a teacher and see what's involved in that. So that's what's involved. Or I've got one teacher, do I like it? And if you find that you do like managing people, then that's the time to adjust, and maybe you get another teacher, and then I actually like managing. At that point it's going to be to go maybe 3 ways. But firstly, I like managing people and organizing these things better than I like teaching, in which case so you can start seriously growing more.
Yeah.
And then second way is maybe I hate managing people. I just want to do my own teaching, which is what I've found. And so then you're like, oh, well, let's not manage people because I don't like it, and so I'll just become good at teaching. That information is so valuable because you use it in your own career, and you go towards your strengths and also what makes you happy.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know if I had stayed managing people, I just hate it so much, I wouldn't have been happy.
Yeah, yeah. So in that, did you find a business partner, or how did that sort of start, where you are able to discover you went into managing the people, but so you're able to get someone in or expand to a point where you could go back to your lane, or where you're really passionate, and someone else could take over the stuff you weren't into but they were really passionate about?
So that was really early on, like maybe 3 or 4 weeks after it started. And so I had a teacher who used to just cancel a lot, but I had already, you've got so much outgoings when you've got a new business, and you've got new expenses, and my entire life savings, as I mentioned, had poured in, and then I started going into overdraft. And overdraft, it seems nice when the bank offers it to you, but you soon realise there's a lot of interest. There's tons of interest on overdraft. So I wanted to get out of it as quick as possible. And we got some singing students, and I had 5 lined up on a Monday, and then 4 lined up on a Tuesday. And my singing teacher would often call and be like, "Oh, Dan, I'm so tired. Like, I just don't feel like coming in today." And I'd be like, "What the hell's going on? Like, get away from me!" Like, and then you'd have to ring up each student and cancel each student. But meanwhile, I've got my own teaching program, and also I love playing piano and practicing piano, so that was getting in the way. I wasn't doing any of that. I was managing. So if you are someone who likes doing that sort of thing, and a lot of people are, then that's a good thing to do. Luckily, I had my housemate, so upstairs there were 2 bedrooms at the academy. Downstairs we made 3 studios, and I got a friend of mine who's a guitar player and teacher to take the other room.
Yeah.
I said, take the other room, and then if you want, you can do some guitar teaching.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point I said, well, do you want to do some admin stuff? Because I really hate it. And this is less, maybe even 8 months in. He's like, yeah. And I said, I'll give you some, like a cut from the rent. So I gave him, he paid me his rent.
Yeah.
And it turned out he was good, like really good. And so I said, well, what about next year? You pay no rent and do all the admin.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And so he's really good. And then I was like, well, what about if you get X number of students, then you can take a cut of that.
Yeah.
And slowly it moved like that. And the more incentives I gave him, the better he did. And also he was just naturally good at that.
Yeah.
And so he ended up running all of the academy except for my piano students. By that stage I was getting up to like 50 students a week, so I was playing out and had gigs as well. So it was, I had enough on my plate.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was great that he was into doing.
Yeah, yeah. So what were the roles that what were the things that he was doing in particular? Like,
So what he did, so many things. He was really good at managing people. And I should say this, part of that, my friend who initially got me into doing the shop and drum, at a certain point in, I seemed to him, people have that saying, it's not personal, it's just business. And I said, well, it seems like it's all personal to me. And he's like, it totally is. It's all personal, it's all relationships.
Yeah.
So it's not just that magically Michael suddenly, took over these roles. During the way we like to hang out as well. So we had lots of coffee, we go for breakfast, and we chat about, where's this going to go? Where do you want to do? Can you make money from it? And so you're building relationships the whole time.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know this from your own, when you get to a new place or your own time in Melbourne, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's much harder when you arrive in a place and you don't know the musicians to start building those relationships. So,
Yeah, yeah.
that was super important. And so one thing he was good at was building relationships with teachers. So that's like super important. And I mentioned before, I see them, teachers and students are like pot plants that you need to water. Like you need to actually be actively involved and actively care about them. Otherwise, they're going to just disappear.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't really care about the teachers that much. Like I cared about them as people, but like, some of them they were people I liked, but I didn't really care about them in that way. Whereas my students, I kind of felt much more connected and I cared to them.
Yeah, yeah.
And then otherwise, I've got my friends who I care about. So random teachers didn't really, I didn't really feel like investing. Whereas Michael really does.
Yeah.
And so even today when last few years, not last year, because of COVID, the year before when I went there, he's out there buying them coffee, he's meeting them for lunch, and there's that whole thing of building that relationship he's doing every day and he likes doing.
Yeah.
Then there's some teachers who don't want that, so you've got to navigate that. You can't be like, hey, no, let's go. And this guy's like, I'm busy, I just want to teach and get out of here. That exists as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Then there's, he reconstructed the website. So he had to do a really good job on the website. Got us up in the SEO Google search, which you'd know about. Got us on Google Maps. And then the other thing we need to do is organise concerts and events. So if you're doing a music academy, an actual lease on a building, you've started an academy, you almost have to think about it as now I'm part of the community. How am I going to contribute to this community? Yeah. And so you get to know the people at the bars, and we got to know the people at the local church. Can we use your venue? Then they're like, can you help us out with this? Different. It kind of works like that. And then people, that's the best way to do it. So it looked like so much of the stuff he did wasn't getting paid. He was like, I'm doing a concert here, we're doing an open mic night every second Tuesday. What was happening is the community starts building up, and that's when it really got momentum. And, to give you an example, by the end of when I left, I think it was approaching around 300 students.
Yeah.
Compared to 8 that I started with. It was 12 when I left, when I started, but when I moved, because I moved from Coburg to Richmond, 4 of my students couldn't do the travelling. So it was 8 students when I started. And so, around just under 300 by the time I finished.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's awesome. What was, yeah, what did you guys look for when you were hiring your teachers? Because did it come from a place of we've reached a capacity and we're having to say no to new students, which then led to us getting someone else in, or were you just looking to fill up the rooms as quickly as possible and ask teachers to bring their students into the fold? What was the kind of...
Well, a few things happened, but yeah, that's the best way. You know how we're talking about that interim of hiring a room?
Yep.
That's what you want. Like, you're full, now I'll get another teacher.
Yep.
So that's what ended up happening. We just get so full to capacity that he would need another teacher then.
Yep.
And so then you start hiring. Also, what happens once we reach a certain size, people start contacting us, saying, "Hey, I'm a teacher like this. Can you give me some students? Can I come in and teach?" And we're always really careful to choose the teachers because it's just so important.
Yeah.
What he really liked there was people who were going to be actively contributing to the environment, to the concepts, and to the students.
Yep.
People who actually care about the job, because you need to, I think, as a teacher. And so you need people with the right qualifications and hopefully who can play.
Yeah. So
sometimes people, just by the way, we found fresh out of uni didn't do so well. We
Right.
wanted people who had actually taught for a few years and had an idea.
Yeah. And how long did it take to get to that point from this, moving into the shop with the 8 teachers and then teaming up and having 2 teachers involved and then the admin taking over? What was the kind of timeline that, maybe there's like touch points that that you can think back where the business stepped up another level and what was involved with all of that?
Yeah, and I actually had, when I started, I had, because I did the thing that I'm not recommending to do, which was to go from zero to leasing a building and teaching. So I actually had a whole bunch of teachers already that I put on the website, and I said, "Guys, you keen to come in and teach?"
Yeah.
And people I knew and had worked with mainly. So the timeline, I guess, it took a few months to get, maybe 2 or 3 months to get a decent amount of students.
Yeah.
But that was around the stage, where I'd really stopped caring about working with the teachers, and I really realised that this managing people was not my forte.
Yeah.
And so I reckon maybe it probably coasted for about 6 or 7 months, I think.
Yeah.
But my own personal teaching practice built up a lot.
Yeah.
And then it was probably once I got my flatmate to start doing the admin when it picked up a notch.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the first year, when we met again and had a discussion about the direction of things, well, then he was more focused specifically on that. So if you've got someone who's like me, I was like, I really want to be playing piano, and I really want to be teaching piano. And I was doing my fellowship exam at that time, so I was like, you need like 4 or 5 hours a day to be working on that. And then I'm there practicing, and someone would ring up, and I'd be like, I'm looking for guitar lessons. I was like, I don't care about guitars. Now, that's a terrible attitude, right?
Yeah.
So, and that comes through. But once you have someone who's, he really does care about that, and he likes it, then it's going to be much better. They ring up for guitar lessons. You can see what we can do.
Yeah.
And then later on down the track, it just got more and more efficient until it became very automated. As you know from your own website, that's the best way, right?
Yeah.
And so now you can actually book all your lessons online, and which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And then they do things like vouchers. Vouchers are great for teachers because at Christmas time you put on, they want a Christmas present for their loved one. It's a bizarre thing because, and we can maybe get into this as another topic, but about 90% of people who get their vouchers don't come for lessons. So you make I won't say exactly how much, but he made a pile of cash one year, and
selling vouchers,
and from doing nothing. People had it automated, so people go, voucher, for my boyfriend or whatever. Click, they can print it off,
Yeah.
and I'll pay you cash. It's like people giving me free money.
And so we're going to go back to the timeline. What was a year in, and it went from coasting to
And I think
admin, guitar lessons, piano lessons,
yes,
and a vocal program.
and so during that year it was singing, guitar, and bass, piano, and then I actually got another piano teacher in during that year. So that was the good thing about me caring about my piano students, is that started actually building up. And then people contacted me, and I'm not really good with teaching the students who are young, like under 7. I don't know if you found this in your own teaching, but you have to be really like, hey, and I'm very patient and that sort of thing, but that's not, you have to be really catching their attention all the time, right? And it's not really my thing, so I got another teacher who was very good at that. And she taught maybe 1 or 2 days a week, so already they went there, we had 2 piano teachers in straight away. So then the end of the year we had the admin, and I think the second year we got maybe 2 guitar teachers in, and we had 2 piano teachers, and then we had a bass teacher, we had 2 singing teachers. What I noticed with singing, what we noticed with singing throughout, is that the students tend to be a bit more flaky. Like for piano, people will come for a piano lesson and they'll go, alright, so I've always wanted to do piano lessons, and I'm expecting that it's going to take years, but I'm in for the long haul. Whereas singing, people are like, oh, I watched The Voice, and I'm pretty sure a couple of lessons I'll be good. And then it's quite hard work, and so not everybody has a good voice, right? So they would quit more often. The turnover is far higher for singing lessons than it is for piano and guitar. Bass, we didn't actually have heaps of bass students, but we had a couple. And then the other one that became quite popular was, what would you call that? Like sound production and composition. And we had a really good couple of teachers there, one who was very, very good. And there was a thing in Melbourne, I don't know if you ran into, a music style called Melbourne Bounce, which was big in the world, whatever that scene is. And so people, these dudes would come in, often like you guys who go clubbing in the weekends, like tradie types, not just, but that kind of thing. And I'd be like, hey man, I want to learn Melbourne Bounce, and I got my computer, and I would work hard, and I'd pay, they'd have sometimes, for those lessons, those productions lessons, it could be quite lucrative, because people would take 2 hours.
And so the school has got so big, and I guess you're doing group lessons?
No group lessons really. Group lessons very occasionally.
Right.
We had, and that was another thing that Michael got happening with more community. It's more of a community thing. So he was a very good guitar player that came down from Canberra. He was a classical guitar player. And when he came to town to do a concert, he'd organise like a group lesson, and people really get into that. And so you have all the people, like 6 or 7 guitarists up there. But doesn't seem to be a big money spinner, because it's quite a hard one to organise. But as part of that community, getting community happening package, it could be good. We did have Steve Settergreen, who I think we met. He did some group lessons there for a while. But he's kind of so well known, and he just hired the space off me.
Cool.
But the group lessons we found it's just really hard to get to take off, because you have to organise so many moving parts. I think the exception would be if you've got like a very high profile person in town for a little bit.
Great. Awesome. I reckon we should have another chat with Dan about the marketing stuff. And because I think that's probably the next sort of step in finding out how to sort of grow, or once this business, or the business has expanded, being able to continue to have more students coming in and to manage that growth. Especially if you're starting to employ other teachers.
On another session, you're saying?
Yeah, we should do another session.
Totally, let's do another session.
Write in the comments any questions you'd like to ask Dan specifically about this moving from 101 teaching in the bedroom style music teaching to moving into a space and starting a bigger business. And we'll talk to Dan again about more marketing things. If you're a music teacher and looking for more students, you should join nzmusicteachers.co.nz. We're growing all the time with more and more students looking for talented and experienced teachers like Dan. So please join the site, and yeah, look forward to catching you in the next episode.